we need to enhance our greatest resource, which is the mind. We need to enhance our understanding of ourselves, of the world, by gaining more insight, more wisdom from the circumstances that we find ourselves in or we place ourselves in. And knowing full well that life is difficult, we need to have a clear understanding, a special place in our mind of the importance of having and especially maintaining healthy boundaries around us. The Buddha was the perfect example of a person who had very healthy, very strong boundary. With a generous heart, he always had an open door in his boundary, which is a necessity in having a good boundary, a healthy boundary, a door with a handle on the inside that we control, who we can let in and who we can keep out. So this becomes a healthy outlet. In the case of the Buddha, for example, this allowed him to ceaselessly give, generously give his teachings to help those who came to him. But he also knew when to close that door, closing it to the toxic elements that every once in a while would present themselves to him. Unfortunately, most of us have the Swiss kind of Swiss cheese, that is, kind of boundary. Holes everywhere. And we've named these holes. They have some legitimacy in our mind for being there. We justify these holes. Or in some cases, we become the exact opposite of all of that by becoming completely closed off. No outlet, no inlet, no doors, no windows, terribly stagnant inside, distrusting of everything, where life does not happen. Now, there's a balance between these two, of course. The word selfish in our culture, in our upbringing, has negative connotations, usually, unless we come across a teacher in kindergarten or middle school or high school that presents a totally different perspective on what the word selfish would mean. The way I see it, selfish can be quite a wonderful attribute to have, especially when it comes to the path, the Buddha's path. So, the way I understand it, this path teaches us to be selfish. This is healthy selfishness, if you want to call it healthy. Just add that adjective to that. And in essence, Nibbana is the result of healthy selfishness. If the Buddha didn't want to experience that, seeing that as the epitome of human experience, of experience, period, something that no time, no impermanence rather, would take away. The expiration date of this body and everything that is pertaining to it, the relationships, memories, all these things are totally irrelevant when it comes to this experience of Nibbana. And to want to take the necessary steps to go towards that goal for oneself first, in order for you to understand what it is, to my understanding, is a wonderfully healthy form of selfishness. Okay. That requires a lot of work, especially when you consider the amount of difficulties that a human being, from the moment of conception, we're facing such tremendous difficulties. Today, partners are struggling to make sure that if, when they want to have a child, for example, they bend over backwards just and spend enormous amounts of money, tremendous dedication, sacrifices, simply to make this thing happen, where an embryo could attach enough strongly to the uterine wall, being technical, so that that could later on turn into a fetus that could turn into, later on, a human being stepping foot onto this planet. A healthy baby, which is, in modern terms, it actually would be a miracle in many cases, where the child is born healthy. And then this child has to face enormous amounts of difficulties in developing the capacities, in essence, resources that often go unprotected. Therefore, I would like to focus on the theme of protection today, self-protection. We have to be the protectors of our boundaries. According to the Dhamma, we see that sila, or virtue, the precepts, is number one here in the field of protection. It stops us from leaking out, and it also stops negative and toxic influences and influencers from leaking in. Now, many people have, tough time gulping down the word selfish. But let us be realistic. We're not being careless. This is not what I'm trying to say. Or egotistical or narcissistic in any shape, way, or form. We are simply becoming responsible. That's what protection means. You are responsible enough to look at what you have gathered, what you have amassed, what you're in the possession of, and becoming responsible enough to take care of it. So it requires a certain level of maturity in seeing what is there, understanding and appreciating what is there, and guarding over that thing that you have striven so hard for, what took you years to earn, acquire. There's a saying, I think it comes from ancient China, where, of course, I'm paraphrasing. I've come across it several times, in fact, where it says it's easier to conquer a very powerful kingdom, easy compared to maintaining one's hold over that, keeping it. So you can conquer it, you can destroy it, you can demolish it, you can enslave all the people, but to maintain one's control over that, that's a totally different story. It's much, much, much harder. So this path requires work. Work, all in caps. That is work on ourselves. And this path does not teach us to delay our happiness. There are no covert arrangements, agreements. They're, I give, and give, hoping that one day I'm going to get a return on all that I've given, on my investment, if you will. So there isn't this secretly waiting or hoping for a return to happen someday. This is an attribute, this is a quality that in pop psychology and even in psychology proper, counseling arenas, has been called as the nice guy syndrome. Nice guy syndrome. So I would say now, nice person syndrome. Oh, I'm being nice by giving so much. I'm giving, look at me. It's an honorable position. How could you debate that? How could you question my motives? Swiss cheese much? Holes everywhere. What I'm referring to is the inability of the person to say no in a healthy and responsible manner. This no is putting like that cement, that brick and mortar to close up these holes that we have justified for ourselves, from which all the rats, all the toxins, all the negative influences creep in, crawl in, and we leak in as we leak out all the good resources that we've striven and worked so hard for, which, by the way, could be, well, not could be, but they are inherent qualities to us. They're innately ours, such as your body, your health, your time, which is so valuable. In tests and questionnaires that HRs would sometimes give to candidates, etc., or in meetings, in board meetings, it would always, it would be asked. I used to participate in meetings like that, and it would be asked, like, what is your greatest asset as a person, as a human being? And people would list their savings and their love for their family, all these things. Yes, they are. However, the one that always comes up at the, researchers have found to be the case, valid asset, is our time. We lose that, we lose everything. But that's the first thing that we seem to be giving away by delaying our happiness, for example. As we list all kinds of excuses for ourselves. And interestingly enough, those that are closest to us, those individuals who really care for us, also notice this far earlier than we do. And they're the ones who tap on our shoulder and say, hey, what are you doing? You need to take a little bit better care of your health, your sleep, your time. You're wasting your time with this person, with these people, doing this in this toxic relationship. So it requires tremendous courage, honesty, integrity, dignity, confidence to get to a point where we can say no to the thing that we know deep in our hearts that is toxic to us. Sometimes people ask or presume that the Dhamma is the answer to everything. And in many ways, one can be justified in thinking so. But I disagree. Having worked with people in different walks of life, from different walks of life, in different capacities, I've seen that we need to use as many tools as we can to work through life, to understand life. And the way we could do this is by first looking at our past, our childhood, for example. What kind of childhood did we have? I think it was in the last session where I mentioned briefly about attachment styles that people have. You know, we have, some of us might be lucky enough to have had a secure form of attachment to our loved ones, to our especially caretakers, which definitely gets to be echoed in the relationships that we are in right now and have been ever since childhood. But a lot of people have this other type of attachment, which is insecure type of attachment. And there's also the ambivalent, where there's hot and cold. You don't know, the person doesn't know how to respond to this type of relationship, what it is. And with the theme of today of boundaries, healthy versus unhealthy, one needs to look carefully at one's life. You know, I would hear often people say, and it happened to me recently, which is the reason why I'm kind of well, I am focusing on this theme of boundaries and maintaining and cultivating it, of course, of healthy boundaries, is because so many of us have been accustomed to not guard the fort, not protect, and in fact, squander our resources. Our calmness of mind, tranquility of mind is the first thing to go. Our time. But we need to look at our lives carefully. A question that came up recently to me by someone who is dealing with this issue directly is, why do I always attract the wrong person? Why do I always end up in the same mess? A question that I used to ask years ago myself. And I always, it was the other person. Well, no. We simply didn't have, well, the door was off its hinges. The windows were completely open. There were no windows, actually. There were just these holes in the person's boundary, in my boundary. So what do you think we're going to attract? Meanwhile, we have these lovely labels like, oh, I'm just being nice. I'm just allowing this person my time. I'm giving my time to this job, which I know doesn't lead me anywhere. In fact, I'm not happy about doing the work. I'm just doing it because somebody has to do it. So meanwhile, I'm depleting my energy. I'm sapping myself. I'm delaying my happiness. To my understanding, that is living a life that's so precious, but dishonorably giving it up, squandering it. See, there is, the Buddha always talked about relinquishment, relinquishing of certain attributes, of negative attributes, the negative habitual patterns of the mind. It's another term for it is in Pali is a nekkhamma. The outward version of that or aspect of that would be someone becoming ordained, becoming a monastic. But that's not as important as relinquishing it internally, within one's mind, within one's heart. But there needs to be an understanding of why I'm doing so. My mother used to say to run away from the rain only to get caught in a hailstorm. So long as we are not dealing with the problem as to why I'm doing this, as to why I'm in this, I find myself in this kind of relationship, one after the other. And then have such a hard time to say no to this toxic relationship, to toxic situations where I'm constantly being asked to do things. And I am, even though I'm aware of it, I am saying yes when I know I should be saying no. This creates a tremendous schism within one's mind. Torture. How can there be peace? There's nothing noble about such a giving away of one's resources and being careless with those, of our time, of our body, of our expertise, of our education, of our money. Whether as a high school teacher or a psychotherapist, whenever people would come to me and as students or whatever, they would say, or patients, clients, they would ask me for advice, quote unquote, or how would you do this? How would you deal with this? Eventually, I had to muster up the courage to say, listen, you came to me asking for something. This is when I had to, really carefully look at my boundaries and to close up these holes. And I had to be rude enough, I guess, to my own understanding of, because I was going against being the nice guy, nice person. And I asked this person, listen, I'm more than happy to share whatever I know or I could contribute to this situation of yours because you came to me. So I have to, I want to give you something, but I've noticed you came again and again in the past asking me for several different things of an outlet, basically, my expertise, education, experiences, and knowledge, and my time. And in the end, you ended up going and doing exactly what you did, what you had planned on doing. That is disrespectful to my time, to all those resources that I made available. And then it would leave me completely, feeling abandoned in a sense, feeling used, feeling manipulated. Now, if the person keeps doing that, what that means is I have simply placated the person. I've been encouraging this person to be that way. And who knows how many people they have been doing this to. Again, this is something that I've seen in my travels. I've seen, especially recently, in several instances, which necessitated for me to address this, because this is something that happens to both, obviously, men and women and all across the board. So we need to approach the Dhamma with a little bit more understanding and appreciation of all these other factors about our own lives, our own past, and how to negotiate it with the Dhamma using Sila, for example, the precepts. which are used for protection. When we say, musavada vedamani, which is the fourth precept, having to do with speech. When in my heart of hearts, I am feeling that this person is here just like before to take advantage of me and my resources, but I fail to have the courage to tell this person, sorry, I can't. Oh, could you drive me to this place? When they have all the means and resources to do that for themselves. And I am in the midst of something important. Maybe the person needs to take care of their partner or their children. They need to, they need something that I would be dedicating my time and energy to cater for and to. But the person, because of their use of coming and knocking on my door, and I placated that behavior, I will give in. This doesn't have much to do with the other person. It has to do with me, the person who's allowing this to happen. And the way that our negative thinking functions, our habitual patterns in the mind, is very similar. When habits, for example, whether it's sexually, when we say not to engage in sexual misconduct or taking what is not given. Let's pick that one. To take something that is not given. When we're allowing someone to take something that we feel that it's ours and it's actually my children's, it's my my partner's, but I'm giving it to this person in a sense unwillingly for some reason. But that is becoming an accomplice to this person's stealing of that resource from my children, my partner, my wife, my husband. So we are accomplices. Why? Because of inauthentic and fake living, which is breaking part of the Eightfold Path, meaning the healthy, right lifestyle, which has to be based on authenticity. In other words, courage. Seeking to be happy. And happiness comes from living truthfully. At least you can go to bed at night saying to yourself, yeah, I live truthfully. I didn't let this person walk all over me because I've been used to that. Or blaming them for being toxic. Yet still within the boundaries of one's life. Why are they inside the boundary? Whose boundary is it after all? Mine or theirs? Is the door handle on the inside or outside? Is there even a door? So there is a responsibility that we need to have, not in just this meditative practice, because meditation is your entire life. That includes your professional life, romantic life, social life, and everything else that makes you, you. So instead of having this attitude of, go ahead and take whatever you want, which is what this, no more Mr. or nice guy or nice person syndrome does, is having these secret, covert agreements with oneself and the world, which the other side doesn't know anything about. And there's a wonderful book with that title, actually. It's called No More Mr. Nice Guy by another, a fellow marriage and family therapist in America. His name is Dr. Robert Glover. A wonderful book. And it could be used by both, men and women. It doesn't matter. It's not just for one particular area of society. It's the issue with the untruthful living, which the person keeps telling oneself, lies, in order to perpetuate this state of affairs. So what I'm trying to say is, let us stop trading in our diamonds for the price of broken glass. This is just unwise. This is just crazy. So we need to have ownership of our lives, protecting our lives, our resources. So the Dhamma is not just about go and sit in some hut in the jungles of Sri Lanka or the Thai forests or somewhere in Burma or in the tops of Himalayas. No, no. It's tougher to live, I would say, the lay life. I'm a bhikkhu. I've lived most of my life as a layperson. It's tougher to have to juggle all these different things and to manage to sit even once a week for 2 hours in meditation. I applaud that. It's a wonderful. I celebrate that. But what my encouragement here is for you to to also consider your other aspects of your life as important and needing of protection. Because I see quite a lot of toxic relationships around me that have these huge, wonderful labels on them. But when you look deep inside and the person opens up and they start sharing all these things, and you see how toxic it is, because the person deeply is unhappy. They have been delaying their happiness. So the Dhamma is about no more delay. Because what if, I probably have said this many times here, to shock a person, I've often said, what if you turn on the news and it says NASA just detected a huge asteroid coming at us that is definitely a world ender, a destroyer of planets. And so there's no way out. And we have about 5 minutes to live. 5 minutes. What would you do? What would you do? What at that moment, whatever comes up first, that is authentic for the person. And usually people would say, well, 5 minutes is too short of a time. Give me a little bit more time, like 10 minutes or a day. But no, indulge me. It's just 5 minutes. Now, can you make your life a series of those last 5 minutes, which turns it into this lovely chain of authentic living for oneself? You cannot afford to keep your doors unhinged. Then becomes very important for us to live responsibly. So Dhamma is also about living responsibly, keeping guard of this outlet and inlet in a more intelligent way, saying yes when we understand that this is going to enhance this human condition, our mind, our state of life. Will it add to our strife and suffering when the person has been helped by us? At the end, when we look back at it, do we cringe in remorse, or do we smile that we were there to help this person? That this person really, really, truly needed us, and we were there. Wonderful. Instead of allowing some toxic person come in, knock on our door, actually waltz in and take whatever they need and want, which is everything, by the way. They're not going to be frugal with that. So living with Dhamma also means living with responsibility as to who we let in our lives. Whose words do we listen to? What steps do we take to protect ourselves and our loved ones and our resources, those things that lay within the boundary of our life. And what do we do with that? Because already we are losing life moment by moment. Guaranteed, we are nearing death. In fact, death is sitting right here on your shoulder, tapping you all the time. Hey, I'm here. I'm here. Just in case you forgot, I'm here. So if that's there, and I'm working so hard to create these resources for myself and my loved ones, and above all, the resource of tranquility of mind, let me reduce these toxic situations for myself. Let me reduce these opportunities for others to leak out, drain me, by my permission, of course. And instead, share generously, wisely, what resources I have available that I've cultivated, lived out by the example of Lord Buddha, that to this day, 26 centuries almost after he's gone, still is inspiring. So that is what I have to share at this moment. I hope it's useful and it resonates with you on some level. And I'd like to open for any questions, comments, critiques, thoughts you have about the practice or otherwise. Yes?
I really, really appreciate your talking about a healthy form of selfishness, because for the longest time, I've told people that the only thing I want my son to be is not to be a selfish person. So I just worry, because I just find kids today tend to be very self-centered. But what you explain is that there is a very important, valuable kind of selfishness that is not equivalent to carelessness.
Mhm.
And I know, like, one colleague that I really admire, but he is the opposite of selfish, but then he let people walk all over him. In other words, he cannot say no. And I feel so bad for him, because he's so stressed, because and he said he cannot be in a relationship because he'll be doing what the other person wants. So so what you said, I like to kind of share with him. This is such an important thing, that our greatest asset is our body, our health, and our time. And by giving that away, it's not being a nicer person, but you are, hurting yourself. So I want to thank you. This is a really enlightening idea of positive selfishness.
I'm glad. And just the fact that he's aware, I mean, I picked that up from what you said of what he told you, that he doesn't want to get into any relationship because he's recognized that about himself. That actually is indicative of wisdom, of understanding in him, which is wonderful. But it needs to be worked upon. It needs more layering. So I highly recommend the book I mentioned earlier of No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. Yeah,
Okay.
and I keep recommending it. I've recommended it to so many. That's the book.
Right. No,
Yeah.
this is a perfect book for him, because he is actually an extremely smart person. He said the other reason why he cannot be in a relationship is that he starts analyzing.
Hmm.
Because he's like a psychotherapist in a way too. So he said that, I cannot fall in love because the minute I'm with someone, I start analyzing. So maybe it is actually a very high form of self-knowledge, that he knows he cannot be in a relationship, because even very frustrating, even to have a meal with him, he'll be stopped by so many students that he would need to talk to each person. I say, so yeah, Mr. Nice Guy, but
Yeah.
not helpful for himself.
Yes, and it's the difficulty in saying no,
Yes.
even though you're bleeding. The
Mm-hmm.
person says yes, and It's difficult to witness, let alone to be that person. You know.
No, this is really good.
I'm glad. Any other thoughts, comments? Yes.
Bante, thank you so much for the talk. I really benefited from the way you define sila as a way to protect our boundaries. That's very, very useful, and it really helped me see the factor of choice that we have in choosing, not only in choosing our thoughts, our words, and our physical actions, but also being in places that may not be wholesome. You know, we choose to put ourselves in our thoughts because otherwise they do not exist in a vacuum. We are always at some place, around some person or situation. So just that, you know, even visually I'm visualizing the protective boundary, fluid in a way, but one that we see clearly and we decide. So that's very helpful, because I think many of us at times can think of precepts of sila as this abstract, like noble, not this worldly, not grounded in here and now, but they are so grounded in here and now. And they can also be a huge antidote for guilt, because some of us may not even know what it feels like to have these boundaries. It seems we may be betraying our family, our culture. So, you know, sila to me helps really powerfully establish the healthiness of those boundaries in the way we feel the fruits of maintaining them. So this is very, very helpful. Thank you.
I'm glad. Yes, a very good point about the relevancy of sila in connection to one's own life, not just internally and mentally, personally, individually, but in context of everything else that we do and with the people we meet, the circumstances we find ourselves in. Something else I wanted to say in regards to that, when the person is feeling nice or feeling like they cannot say no, there is definitely mana, according to the teaching of the Buddha. Mana is conceit. Now, in English, we have conceit, and it usually denotes like being prideful or arrogant, etc. But in the Buddhist teachings, when we see the word mana or conceit, we look at it in its three facets. So it has, the phrase would be something like, you are better and higher than me. I am higher and better than you, and we are equal to one another. All these three, meaning basically superiority complex, which we have in Western psychology, inferiority complex, and the constant state of comparing oneself to others. Now, a person who is undergoing this sense of, oh, I cannot say no to this person. I have to, they don't have, first of all, self-respect to say no. When they know that by saying no, by refusing this request or demand, they would be protecting themselves. By not refusing, by accepting it, they're giving in for more remorseful states, more agitation in the mind. So then it becomes a life that is lived through lies. So it's a false kind of life. The person is living an inauthentic life. And these are the people who end up being depressed a lot, anxious a lot, because they're always trying to find ways to plug up these holes. Well, unfortunately, those holes will never be closed by saying yes to situations that require us to say no. They never will be closed by us perpetuating the negative state of affairs. Because essentially the person is conceited in the form that I mentioned earlier, of always looking at oneself as oh, by me saying yes to you, you're going to like me. I'm going to be accepted by you in this milieu, in this circle, in this company, by you. And guess what? Narcissists can fish a nice person out so easily. This is their domain. They're the predator, and the nice person is the prey. The nice person is also a pleaser, by the way. They are always, it's like they're pleasing someone is like their oxygen. That's how convoluted the mind has become of the person. So by sacrificing, by cutting off, if you will, like the symbolically, their limbs, metaphorically, to this person, giving away their integrity, their dignity, and then you see this partner of, in this marriage or whatever relationship, being tossed around. They have no dignity. I've seen so many people in situations like that. And they have such a hard time to, and they have this giggle. They would say, what can I do? This is how it is. Oh, wow. That's what happens when there is no boundary left. Dust balls come in and out. There's no boundary. And the person is a shell, a ghost of the person that they dreamed of one day becoming. And they're just waiting to die, essentially. Now you see the connection between that and the depressive symptoms, manic depression and anxiety that many people are fighting with. So what I'm trying to do is let's look deeper into this. And no, meditation is not going to fix everything. That's what I mean by Dhamma is not by itself, when you are looking at it in a vacuum, as it were, separate from the person's life and what needs to take place. See, the Dhamma itself will not plug these holes either. What you gain, the understanding we gain through the Dhamma, can enable us to come to this sense of awareness, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I going from one toxic relationship to another? From the rain into a hailstorm? Why am I doing this? Oh, it's a nasty habit. Let me start plugging that hole by saying no, by protecting myself using sila. Can I practice truthfulness, saying the truth to myself first? Instead of wishful thinking that if I do this, if I give up my integrity, my dignity, my time, this person is going to like me. Therefore, my hole is going to be closed. No, it never will. Never will. So that conceit is something that needs to be looked at more carefully in every step of the way. Because sometimes I've also seen this in students when they practice meditation. And they have this same conceit. So the Dhamma is not going to cover for that. So I hope that helps. Yes?
So I'm interested to hear you say that the Dhamma isn't going to cover for those shortcomings of our inability to say no, or people using other people. I just finished an online jhana retreat, and one of the insights that I had during that jhana retreat was that, well, more than one insight, but the knowledge was that jhanas aren't the answer to anything on their own. They're just a tool to sharpen our mind so that then we can have the insights later, or some argument, whether it's during jhana or afterwards. But it's a tool to sharpen our mind. But once we sharpen our mind, then those insights come much more often and much deeper insights. So it seems to me that the problem of the people who can't say no, and the problem of the people who are using those people who can't say no, is that they haven't had the insight that they need to see what's happening. So to my mind, following the Dhamma, which is using meditation and getting to those insights, would be extremely helpful. As opposed to what you said, that it's not really the answer. To me, it's an answer.
Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is it's not like it's not the answer. Of course, it is the path that will take us to a better understanding. However, I've met many people, I've taught people who have experienced the different levels of jhanas, but many people do not understand that jhanas are also very much impermanent. They are, in fact, dukkha. Jhana is also dukkha. Now that is insight. That is living wisely. Now, sometimes people would come and say, well, I'm experiencing the 8th jhana, Bhante. Okay. I ask some questions to find out if that is true or not. But what I care about is, how is this person walking away from me after the interview? How is this person during the retreat relating to his or her fellow meditators, the retreatants? Does he come and complain, oh, my roommates, they're horrible. They never allow me to go to the deeper levels of meditation. Now, on the surface, they come and say, oh, Bhante, I was following your suttas, I was following this and that, but this is it. And they might even engage me in Dhammic conversation. Why did Venerable Sariputta did this? Why did Lord Buddha? But that's to me totally irrelevant. I don't care. I don't care about how many jhanas they have, how fast they got there. I care about their humanity, number one. And that is the problem, because there's so many retreats being done. So many teachers nowadays are conducting retreats on jhanas, whether digitally or in person whenever there's no COVID. The problem that I've seen again and again in this preponderance, in this perpetuation of these schools, that I really appreciate what they're trying to do, I would say, at least on surface. But what is being left out is the humanity. That is what I mean by it's not just the Dhamma. Just, that word has to be there. And they are hoping that the Dhamma is going to come and fix their inequities, in their ways of not healthily relating to their fellow human being. The selfishness that I've seen. I once was in one of those retreats in Joshua Tree, actually. I had a severe backache because I had just taken a shower and sat outside where there was a draft, but it was so hot outside, so I needed to sit there just to get a nice breeze going. Well, one of the persons, one of the fellow retreatants, used to do body work. And I was so pleased to find out that he was helping a woman who had been suffering from neck ache. So I saw him adjusting her, this and that. And so I felt, that's my ticket. So I went to him afterwards, I gave him some time to, but then afterwards I said, hey, is it possible, could you be possibly able to help me? I'm hurting, I'm in pain. And I was. He looked at me and said, sorry, I can't. Just bluntly as that, I just mentioned. Now, I wasn't going to beg, of course, but I looked at him and I was like, you were just helping that lady for an hour and a half. I'm thinking, I'm not saying it though, but he saw that I was there, as well as the two other people who were standing there. Now, to cut it short, this person was supposedly on the 5th jhana, arupa jhana. That means this person has gone beyond loving kindness. This was based on the Brahma Viharas, by the way. So basically, you have gone through metta, you have gone through karuna, So you've gone through all these stages. On top of that, you have experienced upekkha. And I'm looking perplexed, just astounded at the lack of humanity in this person. And after I spoke with the teacher afterwards, and he mentioned about this, the level of this person, where he is supposedly at, I confirmed that he apparently is at the 5th jhana. I didn't care about any jhanas at that point. I cared about this person's lack of humanity. So that is what I am highlighting here, because so often I see this. So what the person does often, without the proper instruction, without the proper guidance, is looking at the jhanas or insights even. Insights too can make a person very conceited, because insights will come and they will go. They will never stay. What they do to the person, that's a different story. Just like the jhanas. The jhanas are just like Bhante Punnaji, the late one of my teachers. He died 3 years ago. He would laugh and he would say, Candana, the jhanas are just a sleeping station. They're sleep. They're like sleep. You rest. So it doesn't have the hoopla, all these, wow, thing about it. We just rest in that state. But what do we do when we come out of it? Has it changed my personality? Am I a better human being to you? To myself? And in that context is what I am referring to by saying the Dhamma is not something to plug any holes with. It enhances our understanding of whatever is happening. Does it make the person better? Does it make the person better partner to their loved one, to their children, to society? If not, then there definitely is conceit somewhere. That's what I'm looking for. I don't care about them coming to me, the students saying, oh, Bhante, I'm at this level, or what do you think? Did I reach this? Am I a Sakadagami now? Am I a Sotapanna? What's happening? I'm caring about how well they are using the cutlery in the dining room. How are they pulling the chair when they leave the meal? How are they washing the dishes? All these are telling me so much. So much about their life. And at that point, slowly, if the person is truly benefiting from the jhanas and the insights, then there's a merger between the life of the person and the Dhamma, and the Dhamma becomes one's life. That is living truthfully. In fact, when you look at the Arahants through the stories, to the Buddha in his life, there's no separation. And that is my goal. That is my desire to see in people that I try to help. And even now, especially in sharing this desana with you all, to get us to that stage, hopefully, with our own effort. So I hope that helps. Yes.
The question about the jhanas and your response, Bhante, reminded me of two analogies that Ajahn Mahabua uses to describe the function of samadhi, the jhanas, and it helped me so much. He says that the samadhi is like the food, the jhanas. You're getting fed well so that you can do the actual work, panya, the work of wisdom. And another analogy he uses is that samadhi is like a knife. You're sharpening the knife with the jhana, so that with panya you can cut, the onion or whatever you need to cut for that gesture to take place. You need a sharp knife. So they are, if I were to use the first analogy of someone who is fed with healthy nutrition, and that's it. They're there, they're fed, they're full, but it's not leading to the ultimate function of doing the work that we need to do, we can do with that nutritious diet. So then it really helps us understand that samadhi is not an end, it's a means to an end. You know, it has a function, and it is temporary, of course. Like food, we eat, and then a few hours later we're hungry again. So it's a constant process, but it has a function of taking us to a higher level of understanding, and of course living, because understanding lives in the world. Every moment we are saying things, we're thinking, we're acting, we're moving. So there's inevitably, it has to be embodied. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you. These are lovely questions, comments. I appreciate this, because this is what enhances the mind, because you know, we need to develop a better understanding of whatever it is we're exposing the mind to, our lives to. And yes, there's plenty of misinformation out there, but there's also good information. But the best way to process both is through one's own understanding with a clarity of mind, which comes thanks to two things, very, very simplistically placed: sati and sampajanya. Sati is the mindfulness which needs to be married, which needs to be joined with the wisdom, which is sampajanya, which is clear comprehension, clearly comprehending something. And that needs to be light-footed. We don't need to be sticky-fingered with that. Meaning, the moment, like in one instant, I might have actually thought, I had an insight or a thought about something. And to me, that might seem like, wow, this is golden. This is a keeper. The tendency is for the mind to attach oneself to that. This is my idea. This is mine. I reached this. This means so much to me. Well, that closes the door for further insights. That means that person is no longer clearly comprehending anything. They're blocked off. That's why the Buddha says, adana patinisagga, which means taking up only to give up. Taking up to give up, like passing the sandbag, right? Never holding on to anything. But the way that you see that you are not passing the sandbag is because there's no sati. And if there's no sati, there's never going to be, impossible to have there being wisdom, clear comprehension. So yes, absolutely. Any other thoughts, questions? Yes. Oh, it's mute. You're muted. Could you
Okay.
unmute? Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You talk about conceit, and I fully agree. But I was thinking, I'm asking a question. It seems to me that the other side, the flip side of conceit, is insecurity, because it's precisely because the person is insecure that he needs the esteem of the other person to think that he is a nice guy. Mm-hmm. So I just want to connect with what you earlier said about insecurity. In my experience, people who are insecure tend to be the gossipers, tend to be the backstabbers. So I feel some compassion for them, because I feel that it is precisely because they are so insecure. But I think that conceit is also there, that they don't want people to see that they're insecure, and then it becomes a conceit. So the two to me seem to go together. That's what I was trying to say. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And remember earlier I was saying about the attachment styles. The predominant one is the insecure attachment style. That's why I referred to that earlier. And that is very much related, absolutely, with conceit. See, a person who has inferiority complex, or basic, as you said, they definitely have insecurities. Now, that's a person that you would never go to battle with. And if you're going to be compassionate towards, I would highly suggest you do it with a 10-foot pole, because they're going to suck you in. So we need, that's what I mean by intelligently, wisely applying what we are learning, and not just blindly. The Buddha never taught, for us to become blind in our compassion, because loving kindness is one thing. Loving kindness needs to be wise. Otherwise, it's not loving kindness. It's sympathy or pity. And I always have to correct people in their understanding. That's not, no. Loving kindness is not pity. It's not even sympathy. It's the fullness of one's heart. There's so much abundance of loving kindness, it just flows from the brim of one's heart. But you still maintain control of your wise choices, hence sati sampajanya, all throughout. There isn't a aspect of your life, a cabinet of your life, a section of your life where these two should not be there. They could go to rest, they could go to sleep. No, they have to be there. Because we cannot afford to be unmindful. In fact, we cannot afford to be unwise, especially in the world today, where we're being invaded in so many ways. There's no privacy. There is no privacy even from your thoughts, because they want to infiltrate even your choices, influence us from every angle, which that's why it's no longer a luxury, it's a necessity to be meditating, to be mindful. You're fighting not just with your own old habitual tendencies, we are now fighting outside forces as well. It's not just like, doom and gloom, but that's the reality. So we need to be very aware and alert of our minds and of what the outside situations and circumstances might be doing in perpetuating a negative state for us, in us, in possibly even perpetuating the negative habitual patterns from our childhood, which we have been already trying to address and heal. Hence, the necessity for us to have very, very strong boundaries with a door, but with the door handle on the inside. And that's an image that I learned from a physician, a psychiatrist in a seminar. His name is Dr. Paul. I don't know the last name, but I love the image that he presented. Dr. Paul. I think he's in the Midwest or somewhere. So I don't know what yeah, we're over our time, but if there's a really strong urge to ask another question, I would be more than happy to address that and then share the merits. Otherwise, we'll just share the merits now. Thank you. Great comments, questions. I appreciate it. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find health relief. May all beings share in these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition and achievement of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share in these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'll see you next time. Be well, stay well, keep smiling. Keep opening the mind, keep opening the heart, always, always, and with sati and sampajanya. Be curious, have fun with it, and protect your boundaries, please.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Nice to see everyone.
Good to see you too.